Okay. Well, it's been a while since we've seen it, and wouldn't be a bad idea to get a copy to everybody. So
I think the Ron, and you and I talked about this. The landscaping portion of that, from our standpoint, we've seen the plan of his build out, right? But there are other issues, and landscaping being one of them. And I think it's a good idea. Maybe we should find out where that is now before that meeting, so at least we'll be prepared for that meeting on what our desires are.
Yep, I think that's a good idea.
Because we had the sidewalk issue. The sidewalk issue, just to refresh you guys, is in our ordinance. We had put that construction like that would require sidewalks, and a sidewalk along Midway really doesn't make any sense. So I'd rather have him take the money that would be utilized for a sidewalk development and put it into the landscape development. And I think that everybody was in favor of that, but it does pose a question on the landscape desires of what we want, and especially with Ron's vision and plan of what Midway looks like right there. So,
in John, is the Planning Commission in favor of the elimination of the sidewalk?
I think so. But the Planning Commission holds everything close to their vest, right? I mean, they have the ordinances they have to work with, and they certainly will work with us. And they showed a desire to work with our tenant. But I can't tell you right now that they would just say, yeah, eliminate that. It's just important to note that the Commerce Park Commission was really the one, or maybe it was the Airport Commission at the time, way back, Ron, maybe you'll remember, that we put the ordinance, we requested the ordinance of the sidewalks be put in because we wanted to have Midway kind of like a main street, right? Main Street USA with sidewalks on both sides. Well, this development doesn't really match up that particular look that we envisioned on the west side. So
yeah, the reason I asked that question is I've been to a number of planning commissions over the years, and it's usually something that a lot of commissioners really stick to their guns about wanting sidewalks. So I was just trying to get a sense for what this commission might do with that issue. So okay, if there's nothing else on Pirates Cove, we'll move on to the item 6B, which is the EPA facilities update. Mike?
Mr. Chair, I'll go back to Pirates Cove and just make one more comment.
Okay.
The one thing I am going to try to do, the DPW manager and myself had Wayne County reach out to us about a week ago, asking if we had any large scale like land moving projects similar to what Brandon is doing, or Pirates Cove is doing in the Commerce Park. They had some grants available. I was trying to get clarification. I'm still waiting to hear back if it is for township projects only, or if there's a way to get a tenant project classified as that, or if there was a way to apply for that grant on behalf of the township. My goal for that would be to offset some of his costs and be able to reallocate that to whether it's landscaping or entryways, and kind of use that to our benefit. It's definitely a tool we could use there. So I'll try to get that application in if the county allows it, and keep you guys updated on that.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Yep. And then for the EPA facility, brief update. I think I sent most of you guys an email, but wanted to make it public in a meeting. The current latest status I have from the EPA, we've been kind of getting mixed signals from GSA. At the beginning of COVID, we were still in our time frame window of when the airport had the opportunity to basically put a bid in to get the entire complex for free and use it to generate revenue. They told myself that was on hold at the beginning of COVID. I had not heard any updates from that, but then the GSA, they reached out to me a few weeks ago, probably a month ago, and kind of did a roundup meeting on where we were at. I told me we were having a bit of a difficult time finding some partners to do the property with, and our main concern was the larger building. They basically followed up with me a week and a half ago and notified the township that they're moving forward with the auction process. They had asked if the township or the airport had any, they've moved away from what they call the conveyance, where we could get it for free, but then they could do it to a direct sale to the township. And I told them at that time there was no way the airport or the township would be willing to pay a fair market value for that complex. I mean, if we can't make it work for us for free, there would be no way that compensation could be done. So the project at this time with the GSA is going to move on to a public auction. We'll keep a close eye on it and see where it kind of goes from there. The township, hopefully anyone who's bidding on the project will be aware that the property is going to have to get, it's got a restrictive zoning, airport A1 on it. So it's kind of limited in what they can use and utilize the facility for. And the other is that there is no tax record because it's always been a federal property. So there's going to have to get taxes established on that property. But I think any potential party is still going to have to work with the township and kind of keep us involved in the loop and be able to keep some tabs on it. But unfortunately, it's just with the big building, I think it was a challenge. We did have some opportunities pop up kind of later in the game, but GSA didn't seem to want to entertain those.
Anybody have any questions for Mike on the EPA building? Hearing done, we'll move on to item 6C, which is the budget presentation. Mike, are you going to share your screen on this?
Yep. Let's see here. Everybody see that all right?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. No more tech issues for the day then. So I included in your guys' packet, you should see your 2021-2022 draft budget. You're also going to see budget trends from 2017, 2018. Those are items I look at for electrical costs, gas costs, expenses, and we do a lot of our budgeting off of. You're also going to, in that packet, see a township loan schedule. That is for our runway 422 reconstruction and our building 63 loan from the township. And then last page there is an inventory asset breakdown of all of our buildings values based on insurance and those things. So with that, I'll walk through this. Feel free to stop, ask questions along the way. Grab this too. So this is the Airport Commerce Park's budget for 2021, 2022. I'm going to make a presentation just as a side note to the township board next weekend. I believe that's the 8th. On just the couple of development projects that we've been able to do and some of the revenues we've been able to generate and give them an update, because most of these projects started and the bulk of the work happened with the previous board. So I'm not sure that this board has that much knowledge of them. I want them to be aware. But here we are for the budget overview. I went back and looked at the records. This is the highest organic revenue since fiscal year 06-07. What I mean when I say organic is we did not pull retained earnings forward or anything like that. So it's the highest natural revenue without dipping into, our cash or anything like that to do projects. I consider our portfolio right now very de-risked and diversified revenue stream from previous. When I look back at 2006, 2007, we had a single tenant in both of our warehouse spaces, and they were providing 33% of our income. That is a huge amount to be reliant on a single one or two tenants. Obviously, we didn't know at the time that something like the housing crisis meltdown could happen. So I think the commission has done a great job over the last 5 years of looking at diversifying that portfolio and changing the revenue streams. Building 63 is a perfect example. We went from a building that could generate $2.50 a square foot to one that's generating $7 to $8 a square foot and is in much higher demand. And instead of having one tenant for the entire facility or two tenants for the entire facility, right now we're halfway into the building and we have 10. So if there is another economic downturn or issue that arises, our risk portfolio, I believe, is lower than it has been in probably the last 15 or 20 years. This budget anticipates revenue from building 61, 62 as a storage operation. We moved that as we built out 63 into the other warehouse, and anticipates the airport continuing to operate in FBO. I think it's been probably 5 years since we've had an FBO on the field. I would love to find one. We'll continue to look. That's something the committee and I will probably revamp, especially with some of the unknowns in the flight school stuff, but we'll take a look at that. It anticipates no rental increases for our Hangar 1 or T Hangar tenants. Most rental rates increase annually based on CPI index. Some are scheduled. The CPI for this year was only 1.02%, so a very minimal increase there. Expenses are all budgeted based upon previous year trends and year-to-date actuals. That was included in your packet. Employee costs and benefits are provided from the accounting department, and we review them in-house. Here we go. So our overall expenditures. So you're going to see revenues, expenses, what the previous year was, and the differences. You're going to see a decline in the airfield revenues and a large jump in the Commerce Park revenues. We'll get into that, but the main reason for the decline in what would be both was last fiscal year we pulled forward about $70,000 of retained earnings for each one to do the Building 63 project. So obviously we're not dipping into retained earnings this year. That revenue, what we classify as revenue, goes away. The organic revenue is higher, but we're just not showing that for this fiscal year. The Commerce Park one, obviously it's up even with removing the $70,000 from forward earnings. It's still up $81,000. That's with the addition of Pirates Cove, a tenant in the tennis center, and a few other projects there. The expenses, you're going to see the airfield side are up a little bit. We've got a couple of projects, and then we put some of the loan payments are in there as well. Fuel farm, we really leave the fuel farm. I don't think I've adjusted the fuel farm much in the last 3 or 4 years. It's really a cash in, cash out account. We have a flowage fee we charge if fuel prices are higher, the revenues look higher, but the expenses are higher. If fuel prices are cheaper like they've been, the revenues look lower, but the expenses are lower. So it's really a cash in, cash out account with kind of a fixed revenue stream that's very low there. It's never going to be a large moneymaker for us. So our total balance budget this year, again, doesn't dip into retained earnings. Our total balance budget this year is $978,581. And that's a little bit higher than last year, but not by much. There's a graph of the revenues and expenditures from all three accounts that we're projecting. And if you remember 2 years ago, we allocated more to the fuel farm in terms of salaries and stuff. And we kind of pulled that out because it just didn't make sense. We keep the FBO part-time salaries in with the fuel farm now, but we removed the manager and employee maintenance employee salaries and put those back into the airport just where they make sense. Fuel farm expenses, again, everything's pretty much unchanged. The maintenance you'll see there is down. We spent around, it was $15,000 or $16,000 last year to rebuild the secondary retention wall around the fuel farm. So that expense came out. Then the $5,000 should cover our normal maintenance fees from the contractor that we utilize to make sure everything's all good there. Fuel farm revenue expenditures, again, pretty tight. You can see that. Pretty much a cash in, cash out. We make a little bit of money to maintain the facility. We've got to keep it competitive. This year's been especially hard with the bridge being closed. A full fuel tanker, we can bring 8,500 gallons across the bridge at a time. Right now I'm maxed out at 3,500. So our fixed costs are the same, but we're paying more for less fuel. So that's been a little tough on the airport, but we're doing the best we can to kind of keep it competitive for the area. I mean, I will hear from a jet tenant if they're looking at coming in the area, and City or Monroe or one of the other airports is cheaper. They will make the difference in the flight, if it's a bigger dollar difference. So we kind of keep an eye on that and keep it close as we can. Commerce Park revenues. I don't know why the percentages went off there. Let's see. You guys should have the percentages on your sheet. I'm sorry, I don't know why they got cut off on that one. The big change there is that first line item you're going to see under Pirates Cove. So that is their new land lease for the development that they're doing in addition to the existing facility and the climate-controlled storage that they rent from us in Building 7. But the big jump there, that $74,000 you're seeing, is the land lease. The rent income on the building, the big difference there is we added Trident Studios in Building 63. That was the last 2 units we added onto that project, so that's generating $27,600 a year. And then we also added in the tennis center at $50,000. So those are the big changes in the Commerce Park. And then there again at the bottom, you can see that prior year, $70,000 is what we pulled for out of retained earnings. There's nothing for this year. There, we're back, got our percentages back. Commerce Park expenses. We have their normal salaries allocation. The commission approved a bonus for the airport manager, I believe it was 2 meetings ago. I split that between the Commerce Park and the airport. That's where you're going to see that one. Everything else is pretty stable. The retirement costs went up a little bit, and health insurance a minor amount, but everything else is pretty stable there. Maintenance and repairs we're leaving at $7,500. That just covers our general building maintenance, water heater, furnace stuff, anything like that. Electricity, natural gas, we're looking 3 to 5 years back at averages. This year has been pretty mild so far. All things considered, we had our one little cold stint there. Maintenance building, this is where we're breaking out. On the Commerce Park side, you're going to see our general maintenance line item of $16,000. Tennis Center parking lot, we're budgeting $45,000 to completely reconstruct that. Unfortunately, with how much that pavement is degraded, that is not resurfacing. It is not an option. We're going to have to fully reconstruct that one. And then on the airport side, you're going to see the Hangar 2 driveway. Those are probably the 2 paving projects we're going to try to link together. And then other capital improvement projects, we split this between Commerce Park and airport. You're going to see that line item on both. There are several other projects that we have potentials on, and then there's also a couple other larger capital improvement projects down the road, things like reconstructing with a grant our taxiway Alpha between runway 42 and Charlie, and also a year or two out a tennis center roof. So the goal with those are, if we have the couple opportunities we have move forward now and we need capital before, we can utilize that. Otherwise, the plan is to roll that over into one of those 2 future projects and reserve it for that. Going further down, bad debt expense, that's up just because our revenues are up. get more, that's good for us. Airfield expenses, again, that salary up slightly from the bonus fee in there. If the board does approve that, we could also, if our budget's looking good as we're closing out this fiscal year, we could take that from this fiscal year. I would think we should do that because that's when the commission approved it, but we'll have to see how that action item goes at a board level. Everything else on that page, pretty minor changes. Airfield expense continued. You can see on here our admin expenses at 2% of our revenue. So as we make more money, the township gets a little more for managing our new tenants and expenses. I know the one item I've talked to a couple of commissioners about, and I'll continue to look at in the future, is we pay an additional 10% of one of the finance department employees' salaries. That gets us kind of more of our revenues and some of our data-driven info. One of the things I've looked at is removing that from the budget, and we'd probably have to add about $7,000 on top of it to be able to pay somebody 2 to 3 days a week in the airport office on a part-time basis. I'd look at incorporating some kind of software program that's going to get kind of a more user-friendly for our tenants and ourselves, and be able to do some more of the invoicing and things from in-house. So I think that's something, you know, I'll talk to the commission about, or if we want to talk about now, if there's any feelings on that. But that's something I'm kind of looking at moving forward. Everything else on that page, pretty much the same. Same thing here, bad debt expense is up a little bit, but that's just because the revenue's up a little bit. Everything else there is looking good. The construction costs, this is where you're going to see this year we're planning on doing the design work for both the Taxiway Alpha, East Construction, and lighting. We're only doing the east end of Taxiway Alpha because our runway 1735 is still an unknown. The state inspectors called me last week and said they want to come down in the near future and do an inspection. So we're going to look at that and see how it goes, but we're going to do the design work. I don't want to do the west side of Taxiway Alpha, because if we do get into a situation where we have to close 1735, it wouldn't make sense to spend $500,000 to be reconstructing that pavement that's going not to an open runway. So right now we're just focusing on that eastern portion of Taxiway Alpha. This year we're going to do the design work. The hope would be to bid and do the construction next year. That will be, I believe, dependent on if the bridge is open or not, because if we have to run reduced loads for a project of that size, I think it's going to make it out of budget, but we'll have to wait and see what we get. The other thing you're going to see, there's the Hangar 2 approach reconstruction. I plugged in $30,000. That is the amount we received from the first round of stimulus funding that came through the CARES Act. So that is to repave and redo the geometry of our Hangar 2, which is our main airport entrance driveway. There's also about, I think, 6,000 or 7,000 in there for some aesthetic improvements for like signage and some landscaping that would correspond with our landscaping master plan that we finished, what was it, last year. Nothing on equipment purchases there. I'm sorry, I'll back up. You saw the other half of the capital improvements funds that were either going to roll over for future capital improvements, or if opportunities arise this year, we're going to allocate those then. The equipment purchases are not this year. Last year we purchased a new trim mower for the airport, and that was what the $21,000 was for. Last page here, the really only thing on this page is the principal payment. That's our $300,000 loan for our runway 422 that we took from the township. That's at 2% interest. Interest rates are climbing, so our recent one's a little higher, but that's the principal payment at $28,505. The expense is what, $4,800. So a lower cost for carrying that, and I believe that's it. There is the summary for the airfield, revenue and expenses, and that will conclude my report there. Any questions,
Mike.
Comments on that?
Before I open it up to any comments or questions to Mike, I'd just like to make a few comments and just let everybody know that Mike, John, as the vice chairman, and I sat down and went over this budget in pretty good detail before we presented it tonight. So John and I and Mike have already reviewed this before we presented it today. I also have had I think 3 discussions with Dale about Mike's bonus, and he's assured me that other than the actual vote of the board, everything's in line. I asked him if I needed to attend a meeting or a study session with anybody, and he said no, that he would tell me if that needed to happen, and I've not heard from him. As Mike mentioned, we've got a number of capital improvements that we're going to have to be doing. John, Mike, and I had a discussion about, our T hangars. Maybe we start doing a little bit of the improvements every year there, because it needs some work there, and so we need to start thinking about that. And then, obviously we got the barrel roof at the tennis court we're going to have to plan for sometime in the future. And then because of what Pirates Cove is doing, and because of what we're going to do for the Hangar 2 entrance, we need to think about, how we're going to finish up the landscape there, since Pirates Cove is doing their west side of that street. Maybe, we use our money and do the right side and make it, so it's a nice entryway there. Obviously, we need to, choose the right type of material so it doesn't need a lot of maintenance. And, obviously we got to worry about deer and rabbits and things like that. So those are just some of the things we need to think about to, some of the money. We're starting to generate a little bit more income than we've had in the past. So hopefully we can start doing some of these capital improvements that we need to do. So with that, I will open it up to anybody that might have any comments or questions.
My only comment is thanks, guys. Good job. And that's hard for me to give Rachel any sort of credit.
Anything else from anybody?
No, I'll just say thank you too. And what you're saying is spot on. We just got to be smart, put some, the landscaping we do has got to be low maintenance and spot on the T hangers. Let's stay up with them so they don't get too bad. So no, thank you for considering those things.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rathel.
So I do want to throw this out. And I don't want to throw it out as a challenge, but I want to throw it out as your responsibility and duties of your commitment and time to the airport. And this is mainly to Mark Glovis, and I'm going to put Daryl there. It is vital for this commission to understand what capital improvements our airport, our aviators, what we need on this airfield, because we are first and foremost an airport. We are an airport. We have a commerce park, but the commerce park is there to service the airport. Aviation is the reason that we all are here. And we can never forget that. We have to understand that. And for us to collectively do our due diligence in perpetuity is we need to have good, solid input from aviators that care about the future of this airport. So we do have revenues now for the first time coming in that are more consistent and more stable, knock on glass, that we can start to put together some capital improvement budgets for things like T hangers. Maybe we need another whole row of T hangers. Maybe we need some maintenance. Maybe we need something else. So as you guys move forward with this advisory group, it's important to know that it's not a committee that was put together to appease people. It was put together for a reason, and that is to get good input and be advised on what we need to do and work together. So Daryl and Mark, as you guys move forward and try to get some people on this advisory group, I would only ask that you take it as serious as we take the financial responsibility that this commission has for the overall complex.
And I'll just say that I think, in this case with this budget that's being presented now. I think everything worked nicely. We had some preliminary meetings and did actually go through all the items that we could use some of this extra money for, and this is how we did come to
Right.
prioritizing the entrance for Hangar 2. So I would say that that is
I agree.
what's going on now, and we look forward to keeping that going and taking input and using it. So
Yep, I agree. I think that came from the advisory group, both the taxiway alpha and certainly this entrance in the Hangar 2. So that's a good example of us working together. But as we go forward, we need to have a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year plan.
Yeah.
And that this commission understands the financial commitments that those things take, and working with Mike, the importance of those projects to the safety of our pilots. So yeah, I agree, Daryl. Thank you for that. And Mark, I just want to make sure that continues with the group that's coming in, and how you guys want to expand this committee.
I think that we're going to add some good members to the committee, and we're going to increase our communication and our activity and be more of a not a force but a resource to aid the airport.
Thank you.
And Mark, you guys have to understand the way to set up. You guys are a vital part of our success, and it's still set up that way, but it takes the effort of communication on both sides, right? I mean, and I just hope that we can do this moving forward.
Well, that's why I'm sitting in here observing to get the flavor of what happens on the other end, on the north end of Grove Road. So we're going to make some changes and have regular meetings and a full team, and hopefully things will improve.
Perfect.
Good. Looking forward to it. Are there any other comments or questions on the budget? Hearing none, I'll move to our action items. And the first item is the approval of the 21-22 budget. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Filarski.
Support.
Support by Mr. Manns. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item is the approval of our meeting schedule. That was included in our packet, so everybody should have had a chance to read it. It's pretty much the same as it is every year, with the first two meetings of the year in January and February being moved to a Tuesday instead of a Monday because of the holiday. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the schedule.
I would move to approve it with the change of, as long as those meeting dates fit my calendar when we move forward.
Not that again.
I don't think we're going to get anybody to support it, John.
All right, I'll withdraw that change.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Rathel to support approve the agenda as submitted. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Filarski. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say no. Next item is our discussion item, the food truck ordinance. Mike, you want to give us an update on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be real brief here because I know we got recreation waiting for us to get off. I met with the ad hoc committee that was put together by the supervisor for the food truck ordinance. And there seems to be some changes, obviously listening to the public wants and needs. Basically, the revised version that's in your packet was drafted by our township planner, Mr. Borden. Some of the key changes in there are basically allowing up to 3 food trucks in the Commerce Park. It's going to delegate the rules to us to determine where we want that location to be. The supervisor had some opinions, but I told him I thought it should be kind of vague because there could be a potential to need to move it. So to have it tied to one place in the Commerce Park or airport just doesn't make logical sense to me. So they backed that off. So again, up to 3 food trucks allowed in the Airport Commerce Park's A1 zoning district. That will be up to our determination. The commission has the authority to designate the locations within their boundaries. What capital improvements we want to do. That's one of the discussion items I think we should talk about moving forward. The other item I had in there is just kind of what operational hours do we want to allow. So basically it's going to designate a lot of the rules to us just with the limit of 3 trucks within our Commerce Park Airport boundaries.
Mike, is there going to be any action taken on this anytime soon by the township board?
The board has it on their agenda for the upcoming meeting on the 8th.
So, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Rathel.
it's important to understand what's going on here. And there is a real possibility that the township board may grant the approval of food trucks on the island because of the pressure from the community. But the fee structure that they're currently talking about is just outrageous for food trucks. They've been talking about matching brick and mortar taxation of other restaurants to put that as a fee, which is thousands and thousands of dollars compared to basically anywhere between 80 and $200, I think, a year for other communities that have permits for food trucks. The reason I bring that up is this could be just a non-issue if the township board allows it, but then mandates to have these fees that match brick and mortar restaurants' taxation, their property taxes. But ultimately, the only reason that we want food trucks at the airport is to make money, right? We want to have land leases. We're willing to put together an infrastructure for them, but that infrastructure has to be ROI'd with fees that we charge these food trucks to be here. If there is literally no possibility that the airport is going to make any revenue, because if all the revenue of user or of permits go to the township and not to the airport, and we have no ability to put our fees or our costs, land lease, or however we want to structure this on top of that, there is no way that I want to have food trucks at the airport if we're not going to make any money off of this. So we can talk a lot about food trucks, but the reality of it is that I can see a situation happening where, yes, you can have food trucks, but no, you can't make any money off of them. So put them somewhere on your land. That's a dangerous precedent. It's not something that we do here. It's not the reason that we wanted food trucks. We want to make money off of food trucks. So I think we need to come to an understanding of the commission of how we want to move forward with this instead of just saying, yeah, we want food trucks.
And Mr. Chair, if I can just make one note, the fee schedule is not included in the ordinance. It's kind of attached to it. And that same thing with the location in the Commerce Park. We wouldn't want that in the ordinance because if it ever needs to change, fee schedules change sometimes on an annual basis. So that's why it's not included in there. But that was an issue that came up at the ad hoc committee of the high fees. I expressed to the committee at that time, I just said, I think we're wasting our time if the rates are going to be anywhere near that for a food truck. Our DDA director pulled some comparables from nearby cities, and I think the highest one on an annual basis was like $350 or $400, and that's really just covering admin fees to make sure that the food truck has the proper permits and insurance and is being safe and compliant. Then I agree. I think we need to generate. If we're going to do any kind of improvements to our land to accommodate this type of development, we're going to have to recoup it. I mean, obviously, I don't think much as the public wants it, the airport, that would be a bad business choice to, make an expense without any payback for it. The existing food truck is a tenant. They've been paying us rent. And we saw, they requested to do that. I brought it to the commission, and I think we're obviously generating revenue from that relationship, but then also it was a want that the public wanted or needed at the time with the bridge being closed and COVID. there was a demand for it, and we were getting that feedback. So it seemed like a win-win to us at the time, but I think if it were to expand, definitely we're going to have to generate some revenue to make it worth our while and pay ourselves back for some of those capital improvements that we may or may not want to do.
I definitely agree. There's no reason to allow food trucks in the Commerce Park if we're not going to generate any income from it. So, I mean, why do it? So I think if this is going to the board at the next meeting, I think we need to pass a resolution here tonight that we send to the board that says we are not in favor of the ordinance as it's written, and it needs to be, there needs to be more work on it, needs to be modified.
Agree.
I'm not sure about the ordinance language. I think that it will be written where food trucks will be allowed. Okay, so the language in the ordinance will allow food trucks, whatever or however many, I don't know. That's not the issue. If they pass the ordinance allowing food trucks, let's say that they say, okay, you can have no food trucks on Macomb Street, but you can have 3 food trucks at the airport. Okay, and the ordinance is wrapped around that. Everybody passes it and they go, wow, okay, now we get 3 food trucks. The township then would initiate a fee. So every one of those 3 food trucks would have to pay the township a fee, not the airport, the township. And they're talking about that fee being in the neighborhood of $5,000–6,000. And they're saying that because that matches, say, the average property taxes that brick and mortars are paying on Grosse Ile. So it's only fair to the brick and mortar locations that these food trucks pay the same amount of money, put them all on a level playing field. Well, so no food truck is going to pay $5,000–6,000. They're going to pay that much money. So even though they passed the ordinance allowing it, no food truck will come over here. And if they get the fee down to, $1,000, which is still outrageous, it doesn't leave any meat on the bone for us to come in and say, well, you got to pay us, $300 a month, or whatever that is, whatever the ROI is of our investment. Let's say our investment for the infrastructure is $20,000. So we'll do an ROI return 3 years. So it could be where the township makes all the money on this, squeezes us out, but then also forces through the ordinance that these food trucks have to be at the airport. That's the problem. It's not the ordinance, it's the fee structure that would be attached to it.
But who's going to establish the fee structure? They are. And
They
we don't
are.
want to leave that up to them. So I think we need to recommend what that needs to be. So again, I think we need to pass a resolution saying we're not in favor of that as it stands.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, that is the one issue, is we're not necessarily opposed to the structure of the ordinance. We have an issue with the potential fee structure. The fee structure is not finalized yet. We could let the ordinance get passed and then provide feedback, based on that. I mean, we're not going to get forced to allow food trucks, I don't believe. But if the fee schedule comes through anywhere near where that discussion was going, then at that time, I think we could come back and just say we're not going to move forward with food trucks because it's prohibitive. But I did make that same argument at the meeting. Taxes that a restaurant pays goes to roads, sidewalks, and infrastructure. This is on our property. We're responsible for all that. So I believe that the fees should come to us. Now, obviously, if the clerk's office or somebody's doing an administrative role on that, they definitely need to be compensated for that. But I think the bulk of the fees should be coming to the airport and Commerce Park.
So first of all, here's just my public opinion on this. I mean, this whole thing started out with the reason for the food trucks being monitored was because they didn't want them on Macomb. They didn't want everybody to go willy-nilly have food trucks and whatnot. And then this became more of a punitive thing where we're going to, charge them so much that they're going to be paying the same as the brick and mortar stores to level the playing field. So those are two totally different topics. So, really, I mean, it sounds like double talk, but, so that's just my opinion on that. But as far as the ordinance, I mean, obviously there's nothing wrong with that. If they, want to limit it to 3, and keep some kind of control, and that suits the original purpose of what they said that they were trying to do, control it. Now, when you enter this fee thing, is there anything that we can do as a commission to, so, I mean, if this thing goes through and we approve this this first part, are we completely out of control now? And then they can just arbitrarily choose what they want, or is there some way that this can loop back around? That's my question. Or do they have to bring it up and approve the fees in a separate meeting? How does that work?
I think the board can do what they want. I mean, they don't need our feedback. They can set their own fees, but I think we need to give them our input.
Yeah, guys, I'm sorry to put pressure on you. I got Mr. Friel yelling at me on the other line to wrap this up.
Okay.
To get recreation started. So,
there's two real quick. There's 2 ways or 2 things. One is we could look at an ROI of, say, an initial investment of $20,000. I think that's a fair price for infrastructure, and say, okay, that is X amount of money per month or annually to return that investment, and that we can have a resolution stating that we are not interested in any food trucks at the airport unless we generate this much money, okay, annually. So that tells them what we're looking for. The other question is more scary, and that is, can the township board just tell us that they don't care about us making money or not making money, and that they're, the community wants food trucks and we're going to charge this fee and all the money is going to go to the township, and we are going to put the food trucks at the airport no matter what the commission says? That's never happened. Do they have the ability to utilize our land? That's another question, legally, to utilize the land without any benefit to aviation. And our land is there only for the benefit of supporting the airport, correct? The FAA will not allow us to get rid of land without studying to make sure it doesn't hurt the funding and the operation of the airport. So anyway, those are some things we got to address quick.
I guess we need to say that we are not in favor of the ordinance unless we have a chance to review and agree on the fee structure.
There you go.
I agree.
We're not in favor of the ordinance, period, unless we have the ability to be involved with the fee structure.
It's a motion by Mr. Rathel.
Oh,
support.
Yeah.
We have support.
Yes.
Support by Mr. Mans.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
All
Mr.
right.
Chair.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Okay, next items, subcommittee reports. We have none. Chairman's report, I have none. Public comment. Mark, you're the only guy from the public. Any comment?
No comment.
No comment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 6:15.
So
Support.
Thank you, guys.
Motion by Mr. Tanova, supported by Mr. Mans. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Appreciate it.
See ya.
Thank you.
See ya.
Good night.